Okay, Thierry, tell me a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, if you don't mind. For anybody who does not know you.
Okay. Thierry Lammers, father of a son of 20, married, living in Gouda, where the cheese comes from in Holland. In the industry of mobile, I guess, for 22 years. I've got a developer background, but also really like to play around with toys, gadgets, things like that. And from there on, I founded the Blaud company together with some other guys, and then the rest is history.
And here we are in these lovely offices.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, and as you said, you've been in the industry for 22 years, so you're a bit like myself. Yeah, similar kind of time. Just before 2000. Same great beard. Well, yeah, I'm doing better. So I suppose what I want to talk to you, David, was around applications, but more around management of applications, and rather than developing applications. Obviously, you've got the developer background. So maybe you could give us a little. We set the scene first of all, maybe like in terms of things that Blaud have done. What have been some of the most interesting app development projects that you've done, or that Blaud has worked on?
Okay. Well, we're into enterprise apps, so everything is related to workflows.
Yeah.
And making employees or the customer of a company happy or integrated in their workflows.
More productive. Yeah.
More productive. For some reason, we're quite good in governmental organizations. So, for instance, in Holland we have an organization that takes care of the roads and the waterways, and they drive around in little yellow cars, and if there's an incident, they need to see what kind of protocol applies at that specific location.
Yeah.
That could be a bridge or a piece of road or whatever. But the moment there's an incident, for instance, the car crash and there's oil on the tarmac and they need to be removed, you need to figure out what companies do we hire to get this piece of road cleared and cleaned. So this application knows where you are, so there's GPS technology in there, and it will sort and filter all kinds of documents for you to know what kind of protocol is applied to that specific piece of road or whatever. So there are protocol documents in there. There's drawings of technical drawings of specific buildings in there. So it's a lot.
That's really useful information to have at the point in time that they need it.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with this is, with the incident also other problems can happen. So there's no internet. There's no energy or whatever you have. So this solution also synchronizes all kinds of data into the device. It will be there, and there's a smart synchronization thing built by us in there as well. So it's basically an app, but also a server solution, solution.
Yes, so it can work even if the internet is down, no cellular coverage, which could be part of the incident.
That can be part. Yeah. So that's another thing that's always funny, because I think it's typical Dutch. It's teletext, so the CFAX. You had it on TV. Ages ago, we developed this solution, teletext, as a mobile app on BlackBerry.
Oh, okay, like a WAP app or?
No, it was a native app, and the funny thing is we got a lot of prototypes of devices in those days. So they gave us a prototype of the first BlackBerry with a color screen.
Okay.
Where we're thinking, we need colorful content, and we found on the broadcaster's website the teletext pages. So we start scraping it and push it in an app on the device. And everyone was happy because they had
the football results,
the football results, and the weather, and then the traffic jams and things like that. So the content was, written in a small, format, not a lot of text in there, but it really fitted the BlackBerry screen
small
really
files
good,
and everything.
and it was fast, and so that got out of hand, and we were basically illegally scraping that content and selling it to our customers. So at some point I needed to go to the broadcasting office and said, well, we developed something that's really interesting and good, and it's really everyone is happy with it. And he said, okay, I want half of that money, and I'm going to invest that again in the same solution. So that basically ended up us building the first iOS app for Dutch.
Cool.
For Dutch iPhones. So that's basically the funny thing is it's still running. So there are 700, 800 people in Holland daily
Still
checking the
that
teletext on mobile, but also on television. So
I think it's still running in Ireland as well. Actually, it's still there. We use it for the weather and sports.
It's a business opportunity.
Possibly. And in terms of how you approach development, how do you do things here in Blaud? Is there something unique, or how do you develop apps?
Well, it's of course you need to go through several phases. We start with the scope.
Yeah.
What's the problem? What would be the best way to solve it? What's the minimum viable product? So what do we need to solve first, and then we put extras and nice features on top of it. You have that Scrum process where people say, okay, we have a sprint of 2 weeks, and then we, with the whole team, we're in there for 2 weeks, and then in the end of the 2 weeks, we see where we ended up. We don't really believe in that way of working because a front-end developer has a different speed of delivery as a back-end developer. Of course, so there are different moments where they need to perform and do their stuff.
Different dependencies.
Yeah. We understand the nice parts of Scrum because you're agile and you can react really good on questions the customer asks you. But what I think is a better approach is to do a prototype of the solution and not containing any code, but all the features in a visual way.
Like a wireframe type mock-up or something.
So we start with the scope, try to understand what the solution should look like, and then from there on we start with wireframes, just the simple drawings of what kind of elements will be there on the screen of the smartphone or whatever we're going to develop it for. And from there we also apply all the digital identity of a customer. So in the end it basically feels like the app. It has all the screens, it has all the transformations and between pages in the application. And that's a really good discussion you can have with your customer, because then I can write down pages of all kinds of features that will be in the application.
It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's hard to contextualize or visualize.
Because if I ask you to draw a house, it will be a different house than I have in my head. So if I can design it and make it a visual thing, really an experience on your device, it will be better. So that's where we start with. And from there on, we try to think of all the technology that's behind the solution. And if we have that total package, that's basically the blueprint of the first version of your application. From there you can start doing your stuff. Yeah,
and it's something that people can touch and feel and understand. I think it's a really good approach.
Yeah.
Very good. And you mentioned earlier on about enterprise development, enterprise apps.
Yeah.
So in terms of, for someone who doesn't know anything about app development, an enterprise app versus a normal app, what's that mean?
Okay. Well, an enterprise app basically has a specific audience. Most of the time it's involving any kind of workflow.
Yeah.
So maybe it's employee to employee kind of workflow we need to take care of. So that means that we need to take care of the digital identity within your corporation, your enterprise. We need to take care of having that application on the right device in the hands of the right person. So there's a lot of logistics going on. There's a lot of security going on. So there's a lot going on. Basically, that's
So it's much more kind of focused on solving a single problem. Maybe you have a suite of different apps rather than a kind of just a general app out in the app store.
Let's say what I think is if you look at an enterprise app, we need to take care of a backend system. We need to take care of the application that sits on a specific set of devices. There's a lot of integration going on. We need to have those applications maybe connect to a backend system behind the firewall. So how do we do the connectivity? How do we do the security? How do we deploy the specific application into 50,000 devices somewhere in Holland? So that's that's a different ball game.
I suppose how do you manage things like change control and all this, which is not a problem necessarily for a commercial or a consumer app. Yeah.
So showing a piece of data in a field in an app is not the biggest issue, but getting that data from a secure point somewhere in your organization and get it in the right way on your device, that's going to be it's different.
Yeah, much more complicated.
Yeah, more moving parts, I guess.
Yeah,
we're talking about.
Okay, just a curious one from my point of view. Do you find it easier to develop for Apple or Android?
Two different beasts. We started off with a lot of hybrid development, and then we found that every time we want to do really interesting stuff with the app, we needed to create native plugins to have that piece of work done.
Yeah.
So in the end, we thought of, well, maybe it's better to just start doing all the native stuff. Doesn't mean that I don't like any hybrid coding or no code or low code kind of coding.
But the HTML5 fad from a few years ago, where we were trying to have a web app.
Yeah. I think at the moment the coding technology, so the EDA, where you create all your coding and things like that, they're so nice and so well thought of by Apple and Google basically, that it's really good and easy to create those code. But there's also a lot of things going on. There's so much innovation going on in native development that at some point in time you better focus on one native language basically.
I remember years ago when when this was kind of a topic of conversation around wrapped apps and all the enterprise apps, there was a school of thought at the time that having a tool that you just put your code into and then it spits out an iOS and Android version of the same app was the future, and there was lots of tools that did that kind of thing. But it seems that people have moved away from that because it's kind of it doesn't get all the great functionality. It's not the perfect code. It's ugly code, I suppose. It's not as refined.
Yeah. And if you look at the time spent in app development, so first of all, when you go through the phases, you need to scope. It doesn't matter what kind of scoping you're doing for Android to iOS, it will be the same amount of time. If you're designing it, same amount of time. The moment you start writing the code, of course, that's different. So if you have a hybrid solution that spits out the iOS and Android, okay, there you have a time saver. But then we need to test the application again on two platforms, so that's no time saver.
Yeah.
You need to deploy it, no time saver. So in the end, only the moment you're writing the code will save you some time. Maybe later on when you need to update your code, it will save you time as well. But the moment you update one base of code, you need to test it on iOS and Android again.
Yeah, and they could end up with different timing paths in terms of upgrades.
So basically, we found that maybe for the MVP and the fast and the fast prototyping and things, maybe it's better to do it in a hybrid way. But if it needs to be production grade quality, I think it's better to go native or go web.
Yeah.
Basically, and for sure, there like you have the low code, no code kind of ways to do things as well.
Yeah.
But these are basically more suitable for one-trick pony kind of solutions that help your employees to do some stuff, or for the time being, be able to access some. Yeah,
because you're reliant on what's available to a web browser on the phone in terms of access to the local firmware, cameras, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be as good as a native integration.
No. You can reach a good quality level, but in the end, if it's something you need to work in daily, you need to have better tools. That's if you're a mechanic working on a car, you're not gonna go with toys. You need to.
Yeah, you get the right tools, absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of leads on to the other thing I really want to talk to you about today, which is around everything you've described there in terms of developing apps. Right, it works because you guys have we have a really good team. You have years of experience and lots of different scenarios, and as you said, you're comfortable to understand native, non-native, when to use in different scenarios.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that's something that's more difficult to replicate as an internal team in an organization. And then there's also, coming from an infrastructure background, the management of those apps. They're not just, I wrote the code, here's the app.
No.
Forget about it. Mobile never stops. You know, the mobile operating systems update monthly. The customers demand continuous change and new features, and all the integrations you talked about into backends. They all are not standing still. They're moving and changing.
Yeah.
So there must be a lot of moving parts there. It must be quite complicated for an organization to not just develop the apps, but actually manage them in life and as they explode. Is that something that you could talk a little bit more about, and maybe something that organizations could look at different options around how they would do that?
Yeah. So that's basically app lifecycle management.
Yeah.
So there will be apps updates. No, there's no way to avoid it. There will be an iOS Android or an Android update or whatever operating system update, or maybe your whole management system, your UEM and endpoint management system needs some update. So lots of moving parts. If you want to have all the people, knowledgeable people related to these moving parts at the same table, it's got to be a quite expensive set of people, and you probably don't need these people around every day.
Yes.
There's some peak moments there where when there's a functional feature added to an application, so you have a new version of the application, you need to roll it out. There are several ways to do that, but in the end, if you do it every day or every week, it's quite a simple task. If you need to dig up, how did I do it last year, and you forget about it, and then it will be troublesome. We've seen cases that knowledgeable IT people were working for almost 2 months to roll out an application because it needed some settings from an UEM system. And if you're working with these systems, so the endpoint management and the application development, and you know how to integrate it, it may be a problem you can solve in less than an hour.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the people around, it's going to be troublesome. And the same is for, if you're an enterprise and you have your endpoint management solutions and you want to push that application into a managed device, probably your enterprise app developer partner won't have that infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah.
So how are they going to provide you with tested
or even
code?
Understand infrastructure?
They basically would be really surprising if they have the knowledge about a VMware or a Mobile or an Intune solution, and on top of that, be able to create code.
Yeah.
The combination is quite rare. So and that's where basically we come in. We can provide you with a broad set of consultants that are able to help you do the lifecycle management, but also maybe help app development organizations deploy applications in a real professional way with their customers. So making sure it will be doing single sign-on against the backend system, or get all kinds of settings pushed into the application so it will perform in a specific way.
So it's easy to get the configuration deployed quicker rather than rewriting the code.
Yeah. So things like that is, I think that combination is quite special, it's quite rare, but in the end it will save you. I guess it will save you time.
Yes.
It will thus save you a lot of money. I think the end user experience will be better, because if we can provide an app developer with the knowledge to develop it in a real enterprise way, it's probably a better solution in the end, and it will make the end user happier working with the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other key area here, as people may not realize, is that the people with the power here are the Apples and the Googles. They make the decisions on how apps should be deployed. Yeah. And it used to be very easy to deploy an app to a device. You just, what we would call sideloading. You would just run like installing on a Windows PC. You just click on a file and install, and it worked. You can't really do that anymore.
No.
And they're constantly changing the rules there, and they wanted people to do things differently, and they want to publish into Play stores. There's a lot of other areas now that need to be thought about, and that comes with its own set of rules that change on a regular basis in terms of keeping the app up to date and security and API versions.
Yeah. So in the end, you need, for that scenario, deploying the app. These days, you need to put your enterprise app in one of those public app stores.
Yeah.
You get your own specific area with enterprise.
Like a business app store.
Yeah, your personal business app store, but you need to connect that app store with your own endpoint management solution to get that app out of that store and push it into your devices. So and that's extra moving parts. That's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, and then it's not something the corporate themselves have any control over. They can't ask Google or Apple to slow down or stop their changes. They're not going to do it.
And there will be changes, and and that's good. You're right about the companies. It will be Apple, Google, Microsoft, basically dictating how we should do our IT job, and there are a lot of moving parts around it.
Yeah, we're all moving at the speed of cloud now. We don't necessarily own our own infrastructure like we used to. Yeah.
No, and so I think in the end, if our customers can focus on their core business, we take care of the app development, or liaise between our customer and the app developer to make sure that it's a smooth deployment of their solution.
Yeah, I think your I think your mechanic analogy was a good one. You could service your own car, but why would you? Once a year, you'd be looking up a YouTube video and a manual, and you'd be very slow, and something could go wrong.
Yeah,
you just go to the dealer, you go to the service team, and they do it properly, and they're quicker, they're faster, and they're probably going to save you money.
Yeah,
in terms of doing it. So it's it's a similar kind of thing. You go to the right place, get the experts all in one who have those skills.
Yeah, and I think in the end, it's also maybe related to business continuity.
Yeah.
So it's expensive to have a team of developers, and you need to keep them with good projects to keep them on board, but also productive for your organization. So in the end, some of those rules, it's better to outsource them to knowledgeable people.
Absolutely, I know from something I see a lot of in the security world is app testing is something that a lot of organizations struggle with, having these security teams being able to do testing of apps.
Yeah.
It's maybe not as developed an ecosystem as Windows, where you have a lot of automation around app testing. It's because, again, the speed of mobile, speed of change, and the nature of mobile devices themselves make it more difficult to do all that. So it's something like a lot of organizations, they're focused on the productivity, but with the increasing focus on security and risk management we have these days, they're looking back and thinking, how can we make sure this app that might have access to patient data or access to internal confidential files still meets all our security standards.
And it's nice that you mentioned the patient records. We work together with a company here in Holland that creates a solution that's one of the biggest patient records solutions in Holland, and they tell their customers, those are hospitals, they say, we're not going to give you our application before you've deployed endpoint management solution and have your all the management.
Need a minimum set of standards.
You just make sure that the infrastructure is top notch and up and running, and you're in control of everything, because it then makes it more easy to deploy application, make it more secure.
Brilliant.
Well,
look, Thierry, thank you very much. That was really, really useful to get an understanding of what you've been doing here. That app management service, that kind of app lifecycle management, I think you call it, is for me, it's something I see lots of my customers struggle with. And I think it's a service that's very hard to manage in house because it's so resource heavy, and in some ways it's maybe not that interesting. Like, developers want to do new stuff; they don't really want to be maintaining old stuff. So I think it's something that a lot of organizations could look at as a good option for outsourcing.
Yeah, correct. All right. Well,
brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for